Welcome to Scoolinary, the online cooking school that transforms people and connects cultures. You will learn with the best chefs in the industry, and you will discover the broadest online catalog of topics related to gastronomy. We publish new courses every week. In our podcast, we have coffee with a chef every week. Each of them will tell us about their experience and their vision for the culinary world to help you better understand this exciting industry. Come on, join us for coffee. So today we are joined by Justin Horne, an eco-chef and advocate for sustainable, ethical, and wild food. He has wholly adapted his cooking ethos to the framework laid out in the Chefs Manifesto, which counts 8 initiatives dedicated to improving our global food system. Founder of the first plant-based, zero food waste restaurant in Europe, Justin is championing the concepts of snout to tail and scale to tail, which you can learn about in his Scoolinary course, No Waste Fish. Hi, Justin. Welcome, and thanks for joining us for coffee.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Before we begin, question for you is, do you drink coffee?
I do occasionally drink coffee. I've noticed as I get older that I can't really drink coffee after about midday. Because the half-life on it, I think it just affects my sleep in the evening. So yeah, I'm a morning coffee drinker. None of the after-dinner espressos for me anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people, myself included, will be able to relate to that. How do you take your coffee?
I don't drink much dairy anymore. It doesn't really agree with me. So if I have milk in it, it'll be usually oat milk and sort of a latte. Sometimes I'm feeling fancy, maybe a cappuccino. Yeah, it depends where I am. I mean, when I'm in Italy with my Italian friends, I'll have I have espresso in the morning with them. Yeah, I think it's usually in the UK. It will be a lovely coffee shop next to my house. Actually, 2 either side. I'm bookended by 2 great coffee shops.
Oh,
so
nice.
Yeah, usually we'll be with oat milk.
Oh, that's nice to have a choice.
And a touch of honey, actually. I've got some really nice organic honey, which I produce myself. Not actually from my own body, but from some great farmers that I work with. So yeah, sometimes we'll sweeten it with a touch of coffee, with a touch of honey.
Oh, that sounds indulgent and really nice. If you could please tell us in your own words who you are and where you're from. Our listeners would love to have a chance to get to know you a little bit better.
My name is Justin Horne. I'm a chef, eco-chef. I've been focusing on sustainability for the last 8 years. I live in London. I was born just outside London, sort of grew up in North Devon. So yeah, I've been in London about 25 years now. I've lived in different countries, but yeah, I've predominantly been here for the last 25 years.
Oh, very good. Can you explain to us, what is an eco-chef?
An eco-chef focuses predominantly on sourcing climate-friendly ingredients grown with respect to the earth and its oceans, shops seasonally, promoting and supporting local farmers, and designing menus using minimal waste. So going back to a pre-industrial farming techniques and way of thinking. Ideally, that's how we want to think, without minimal intervention into the products that we use. So low processing, apart from maybe fermentation and processing one does themselves rather than pre-processed foods and pre-packaged foods. So using whole ingredients and working especially with people who do promote that kind of thinking and ethos. So usually minimal intervention farmers, organic farmers, biodynamic, regenerative farmers who put back more than they take out. That's what we focus on.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned before the start of this interview, you are the founder of Sativa Food Studio that adopts this style, if you will, or incorporates it in its business model. Can you tell us a little bit about Sativa Food Studio, or correct me if I'm saying that
Sativa.
wrong?
I mean, sativa comes from the Latin botanical term for domesticated crops that are grown for human health. So oats, rice, barley, alfalfa, ginger, garlic, carrots, and hemp, which a lot of people know it from. It came on the back of Tiny Leaf, actually, my restaurant, zero waste restaurant we had about 8 years ago. I was looking to grow from that to create a business that is emulates Mother Nature in its design. So I worked on this large project in King's Cross, designing a restaurant that generated its own energy, grows its own food, sequesters the carbon in the building into the plants that it grows inside the building.
Wow.
It's been an ongoing project I've been working on. The project in King's Cross didn't work out because of a couple of reasons. But yeah, I have the framework in place for that, and the partners, biomimetic architects that I had worked with, people who built biodigesters, vertical farmers, all these teams that I've still been working with a few other projects now. I've introduced into universities that I've collaborated with. So yeah, I still have the team in place, which is looking for a space to build that vision. And in the interim, after I launched the brand, I started doing pop-up, potential pop-up restaurant that we were running in Kensington for the last few years. And then on the sideline of that, I started a product line using would-be surplus or would-be waste products such as onion skins. We have a product line of onion skin salt, which really has all the flavour in it once they've been dehydrated and ground into a fine powder.
Wow.
Mixed with I've got a garlic skin one, and then apples. We made an apple chutney with the byproduct being the apple cores and peels, which we made apple cider vinegar from. Then I have great olive oil, organic olive oil, in the range we sell on our website, which comes from this lovely farm in northern Spain. And some of the waste wood from the farm we turn into knife handles, which we have on our website as well. So yeah, just thinking circularly and cyclical in design of food and products around it. I'm currently launching actually our new bottles, which we're just having made at the moment, which are very, I'd like to say, yes, dual functionality. They're very beautiful to buy products in, but because they're so nicely designed, they'll have a second life in people's homes for them to use as storage containers for any of their other products as well. So it'll be an ongoing promotion of my brand with the bamboo lids on them, as well as have a secondary home for people to use as well.
Oh, nice. Is there anywhere we could actually take a look at those bottles?
They will be on the website very soon at sativafoodstudio.com.
Great.
Yeah, they should be up. I may have them I have all the samples here. We're just playing around with labeling. Yeah, I want to have labels that can be taken off easily, so that the consumer can have a second. A lot of bottles that when you do have nice bottles and jars, it's very hard to get labels off, and they just look very messy. And it's very labor intensive. So I want to make that, from my own experience, an easier solution for the customers to have.
Now, you mentioned one of your suppliers, and the Sativa website names its suppliers and lists how far away they are, down to the 10th of a mile. Why is this so important for people to know?
Part of the storytelling, I want our customers to know that we care about how we source and where we source from. And ideally, our vision was to have within 100 miles of our shop in London. Sometimes it's not as easy to do that. I mean, there's some other suppliers we brought on that you've had to stick with that outside of that, because they offer a very sustainable. They're best at what they do, but they may be a little bit further away, such as some of our fish suppliers down on the south coast.
Right. I was wondering, as you were speaking earlier, do you find this harder to do, or do you think this is harder to do in a place like the United Kingdom, where the climate might not be so favorable to growing all the ingredients within season?
I mean, I think they say that necessity is the mother of invention. The less you have to choose from, the more creative you get. I mean, we have a great company like Hodmedod's, who I've been working with for years. They have been promoting ancient grains and pulses that have been lost in the UK. They've been promoting farmers to use them, but they've also been growing things such as quinoa, which is normally from South America. We're growing that, and there's farmers who grow it out in Essex, and there's farmers who grow it up in Yorkshire. So they've got two farmers that they work with growing locally grown organic quinoa. And one of them actually smokes the quinoa on site. So you have this wonderful, nutty, smoky profile of what would normally be an international grain grown within 50 miles of where we are.
Wow, that's really really cool. Now, are there any foods that are off the menu because they don't fit in with your ethos, either as a chef or within Sativa?
I mean, we are predominantly plant-based where we are.
Mhm.
I mean, the restaurants I've worked in over the last few years, if we are going to use fish and meat, we use the most regenerative and low intervention farmers and producers for that. I don't usually use much pork because a lot of people I work with don't really. I don't know, it's kind of fallen out of favour a little bit in the UK.
Yeah.
I don't use farmed salmon because of the tox. The way it's treated in its farming process. There's a lot of intervention into it from pesticides, fungicides, and other antibiotics, etc. Because of the overcrowding in the farms. I mean, we occasionally use like Atlantic sockeye salmon, but then that comes from quite far away. So I really prefer much more local fish. Some of the trash fish that they call it, some things that are thrown away, which aren't bycatch, I think is something that is. Hugh Fearnley-Whittinstall did a documentary on it a couple of years ago. He showed that a million tons of edible fish is thrown away every year as bycatch.
Wow.
I'm actually I'm going to be talking about that in Dubai next week. We're at COP28 doing some consultancy masterclasses from the catering there. One of the dishes I'm doing is actually fish and chips, but it'll be working with local fishers, promoting some of the bycatch options.
Yeah, can you tell us what you're doing in Dubai? You're leaving this weekend to go to Dubai, and can you explain a little bit about what you're doing there, please?
Yeah, so we're working with the Chefs Manifesto team on a climate conscious catering for people, planet, and prosperity. It's to offer a 1.5 degree aligned sustainable catering menu to the attendees of COP28. There's approximately 70,000 people, and it'll be about 250,000 meals that are all tasty, nutritious, and climate friendly.
Wow, that's a lot. Uh, yeah, to say, I
Well,
mean, it's a little bit of an underestimation.
it's a great learning curve for all our chefs as well. And there's about 10 of us going from all around the world. And it's always great to interact with other chefs and see how the influence of their ancestral recipes and
Hmm.
knowledge and ingredients are used in their cuisine, and how we can learn from each other and learn different techniques and understand further about other cultures and with our chef friends that we work with.
Sure. And since you brought it up, you are a member of the Chefs Manifesto, which is a Scoolinary partner, whereas other chefs are adapting the 8 initiatives laid out in the Chefs Manifesto to their style of cooking. You're using those initiatives, which are intimately tied to the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, to guide your culinary creativity. What are some of the things that you consider when
Yeah, I mean
developing a new
the
recipe?
goals. There's the 17 UN United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Of about 14 of those are directly related to food, but the UN SDG document, I think there's about 147 subsections to it, so it's quite a large manifesto to get your head around. So we got together, Paul and the
Yeah.
team, myself and some other chefs and NGOs and different partners we had on board in 2017, and we wrote the manifesto. So so I mean, it's taken the UN SDGs and condensed them down into a framework that chefs can use in their kitchens all across the world to be, compliant in the Sustainable Development Goals.
Wow. Have you always been interested in the topic of food waste?
Depends which, I mean, I
Yeah.
actually, it was in 2015, I was working on a big project in America, out in the desert, actually. I was designing a sustainable hotel for quite a well-known artist, and the partners he was working with were running this camp in Burning Man. So I got invited to go there as the chef director to look over what they were doing there and emulate that into another project in the UK. And whilst there, I realised how 70,000 people are very conscious of their impact into the planet. and there was no waste there. I mean, it was incredible to see coming from
Hmm.
going to places when I was younger, like Glastonbury, that and other UK festivals that it's just covered in like just you're just wading through rubbish to get from one place to the other, and they managed to do it in the middle of a desert with no with leaving no trace. So that inspired me to think about that. I mean, there's some of the people I met
Wow.
there as well, and the creatives and artists and businessmen and women I got to meet and work with sort of inspired me to think more about my business and my goals and how I want to live my life. So when I came back from that, and that was the sort of integer that launched me to open Tiny Leaf about 3 months later, a zero waste, plant based organic restaurant in London.
Wow. Now, let's go back a few months. Back in June, you introduced a new plant based dish of roasted and braised beets, roasted fennel, and anise puree, toasted
Mm-hmm.
walnuts, blackberries, red vein sorrel, and summer truffle, which you named Beets, and that's spelled Beets by J,
Mm-hmm.
which is a clever name. What inspired that dish, please?
It was well, it was working with our farmers basically that and what was in season. So just as I was saying earlier about working with what you have and the more creativity you get from having a limited number of inputs into a design. So yeah, I had a lot of beets. I mean, I love beetroot myself, so we did beetroot in a few different ways. We used a skin, beetroot skins, beetroot leaves. Fennel was in season then, and yeah, blackberries just came in, and we had it was this the one of our suppliers sent me some truffles to try, so we put it all together. So it was a plant based dish as well. So it was
Yeah.
elevating a plant based dish, using things that such as truffle, and the blackberries kind of look like caviar when they're cut on the bias, and then because it was beets and people, there's obviously Dr. Dre's earphones, and my
Yes.
name is
Yeah.
Justin J, as I'm known as Jay. So I thought Beats by Jay rather than Beats by Dre would be quite a fun play on words.
Oh, for totally. Yeah. It was attention grabbing to say the least. Now, you are a professionally trained chef, and as a private chef to elite clients in the past, at least, you've been able to procure some of the rarest, most expensive ingredients in the world. Yet these days, you are championing ingredients that are more easily accessible, like millet, carrot, wild fennel, and turning them into haute cuisine dishes. Uh, can you take us through your transformation as an evolving chef?
Yeah, I mean, as I started out in restaurants many years ago, I always sat quite badly with me the amount of waste, especially high end restaurants, to get in search of perfection for a dish. Everything else is discarded, which for me never sat very well. Even from the beginning, I'm like, I don't. 'Cause as growing up, my mother was a chef and my grandmother's a chef, so I grew up eating a lot of food. I think the first thing on my first week working in a high end restaurant when I was in my 20s was preparing an artichoke, and we had to cut all that. We cut away 90% of the vegetable just to use the heart. All those
Sure.
leaves and everything was thrown in the bin, and we filled up bin bags and bin bags of leaves. And I used to eat those leaves when I was a kid, and I'm like, this is so strange. Why are we throwing all this in the bin? And then from there, every time I was sort of made to discard ingredients, it's just always sat very, it was disconnect in the way that I grew up. And so when I had the opportunity to, I mean, there was that stage, obviously, as you mentioned, I had a lot of private clients, and I'd be sourcing the best ingredients and caviar and gold leafing things. My marketing manager at Tiny Leaf, she brought that up because there's a few articles on me and TV shows that I did around the world's most expensive food. I did that on Channel 4. And then launching the world's first plant-based zero-waste restaurant. She's like, so she brought this tagline. She's like, from gold leaf to tiny leaf. The restaurant's called Tiny Leaf. She's like, how are we going to manage your persona? Because you've obviously been known for doing very luxury and in turn quite wasteful things, and now you're doing the polar opposite. I mean, this was 9 years ago now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of my journey ever since then has been to make, using things that actually matter and things that are important to me, which is, regenerative food, whole food, seasonal, and working, with your farmers to produce the best nutritional food, not obviously the most expensive food. Sometimes it
Yeah.
can be expensive to then source some of the better ingredients, but I'm not buying the most expensive food for the sake of it just because it's a luxury item. I'm now investing into the nutritional profiles and the storytelling and into the farmers.
Hmm. Do you see the professional kitchen kind of trending or tending toward more generative foods?
I mean, it's hard. I've worked in a few kitchens, quite a few kitchens, but I mean, especially with the high volume,
Yeah.
they can. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of restaurants are now definitely sourcing much better quality. I mean, there's in nutritional quality and local. I mean, if it's local, it's going to be seasonal because obviously wherever your locality is, you have to be within the seasons of that location. And if it's usually local, it will be hopefully regenerative if you're getting away, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be less carbon, depending on how it's grown. I mean, obviously, eating tomatoes out of season, they're using heated polytunnels or
Hmm.
greenhouses. Even though they are local, they're not going to be as low impact as a seasonal tomato maybe grown in Italy that's actually still being grown with using sun and nature rather than something that's local that is higher
Right.
intervention. So there's Paul and us and the team at the Chefs Manifesto are always discussing these factors. Actually, we're going to be using Nutritics, which is a nutrient statistics app, this week and next week while we're in Dubai to help our masterclasses on low carbon recipe development. So yeah, they have a lot of inputs in that, which can help you with your carbon accounting.
Yeah, it also has something to do with taste as well. It just, for someone who might not have grown up with the authentic taste of a tomato, it also kind of might take a little bit of reconditioning to teach people, like, this is what a tomato tastes like, and then they can never go back.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
it's crazy. I mean, I didn't grow up with like the best tasting tomatoes.
yeah,
They were kind of off. They're quite hard. They weren't red. They were like a pinky off red color, and they had
yeah,
no taste. They just tasted of water. I mean, that's what
right.
I was used to. I mean, sometimes we go to farmers markets, and I did grow up in the countryside, but the ones we got from supermarkets were always very. In the 80s, were I don't know, it left a lot to be desired. But now, I mean, there's such a bountiful amount from so many farmers in the UK. Isle of Wight is quite famous for its tomatoes now. They've been
Oh,
growing some amazing varieties. We have Nutbourne, which is down in Surrey. They grow amazing tomatoes. They do 25 different varieties there.
whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I was living in Ibiza running a restaurant there last year,
Yeah.
farm to table, and we had an acre garden that just outside the kitchen door, and we grew 8 different varieties of tomato there. I mean, but it was so warm there, you could grow. It was going to the other end of growing, not having the climate that was way too hot. You're over like mid 40s in the summer,
Yeah.
so you've got to sort of cover your tomatoes so they don't get too burnt
Mhm.
because of the heat. They were growing watermelons outside the kitchen. We had 6, 7 different varieties of chilies. And then there's all the wild food as well, which is a passion of mine, growing in between the plants and around the beds.
Oh,
They had like
wow.
wood sorrel growing there and lots of different like vetch, which is a pea variety. All these an abundance of free wild food. And it's great, cooking with wild food as it's not been, a lot of it are superfoods and they've not been industrialized over the last 100 years, so they still have their nutritional profiles. Unlike oranges, which I think they're running at about 65% deficiency of the nutrients they used to have 50 years
Oh,
ago.
yeah. You reminded me of something. If I'm not mistaken, there's a town in, I think, the northern part of England called Todmorden, and I believe that I mean, just wild food grows. It's not cultivated, but it is encouraged to grow throughout the town, and any citizen of the town is encouraged to, pick what they can find, but do it responsibly. So you leave what you don't need, take just what you need and leave the rest for your neighbors. And I'm wondering if something like that could be encouraged elsewhere in the world.
I know that there has been something in Los Angeles with one of the locals in southern Los Angeles has
Yeah.
been using the gardens and the places on the sidewalk to
Mhm.
grow food for the local communities, and it's really taken off there to educating and giving power back to the local communities by growing their own food.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
I know we have it in the UK. We do have a lot of, wow, it's not as much as I'd like, I don't think. I mean, I did grow up wandering around the countryside eating wild berries and wild apples, but I think there could be definitely room for improvement here. I mean, living in Spain for all last year, so much abundance there, just fig trees everywhere, and
Yeah.
just so much wild fennel everywhere. The whole countryside is just covered in it.
Oh, wow.
We used to use that in our bread. We worked with this great grain supplier just near the restaurant actually, who'd grow Xeixa, which is Xeixa,
Hmm.
Xeixa. Yeah, it's a 3,000-year-old ancient grain that was nearly lost. So there's some new farmers in Mallorca and Ibiza who've been young. There's young farmers. The next generation of farmers have been really regrowing and getting interested in developing these old ancient grains and actually, yeah, supporting their integration back into society again. So yeah, we had that. We had two breads: our house bread and our flatbread we used to make in the restaurant. Were
Wow.
grown less than a kilometre away, and we'd pick up as a bag. I had my name on it, a sort of 25-kilo bag that had been milled for us the day before. Yeah, it was
Oh,
great working so close with the farmers there.
the taste must have been incredible as well.
Yeah, super nutty profiles on it.
Yeah.
Incredible flavours.
Wow. So your Scoolinary course is called No Waste Fish, which encourages us to take advantage of all that a single fish has to offer. My question is, what's a good recipe to start with?
Well, I mean, you've got to think holistically about any ingredient. With the no roast fish, we took the skin off. We used the skin separately for ceviche. Then we used the collars, which are often thrown away or put into stock if you're using the whole fit. If you're trying to use more of the fish, but yeah, the collar just sitting behind the gills. It's a little bit bony, but has the best flavour I think on the fish. You've got part of the fillet from the top of the head, then you have running down
Hmm.
underneath the jaw. So I made sort of chicken. It was kind of like chicken wings, but fish wing barbecued wings out of it, which is one of my favourite things. We used to have them in the restaurant. Actually, after that course I did, when was it, last October, I think. Yeah, we ended up putting them on the menu in the restaurant.
Yeah,
Great
I've
way to
seen.
use.
Yeah, I've seen that particular recipe kind of pop up in different places. I think it's prominently on your Instagram page too. It's a
Mm-hmm.
yeah, an attractive recipe. Well, now, how do you inspire cooks, either professional cooks or home cooks, to rethink food waste?
Food waste is a lack of imagination. That's a dear friend of mine said to me. We have to. Maybe it's respecting the ingredients as well. I think if you respect your ingredients and you buy good quality ingredients, you're not going to want to waste them. I mean, bread is the biggest waste product in the UK, followed by apples. I think it is. There's a great company we helped launch their beer called Toast. It's
Hmm.
run by Tristram Stewart, amazing food waste advocate friend of mine, and Hugh Fearnley Whittingstall launched it. And in every bottle there is a slice of bread, not literally, but that's how much they use that to make bread.
Oh,
I think there is 30. They told me the massive 1 ton of bread makes 33,000 bottles of beer. So they work with a sandwich company using the ends of that get thrown away, the crust on either end,
yeah.
the heels, I think it's called heel. Yeah, so they utilise that to make beer. We actually did an event with them a few years ago at Tiny Leaf. We worked with a baker who made bread out of the beer. And then when the bread left at the event, we gave it to Toast to make beer out of. So they had a beer that was made of bread, that was made of beer, that was made of bread. So it was like 4 recycled. Recycled 4 times, which was incredible. I mean, obviously, people can't be making that at home. But with the home cook, you can actually make Marmite with waste bread, which is
Oh, yeah.
You just sort of soak your crust, keep them all, add some yeast, ferment it for 3 days, and you cook it down, and you end up with Marmite, which is everyone loves them. Well, it's not half the people love Marmite, as
Yeah,
they say.
actually, for people who are outside of the United Kingdom, if you will, what is Marmite?
Marmite is it's a yeast extract paste, so it's like a new umami. It's kind of like a UK version, I guess, of miso-ish.
Yeah.
It's quite salty. Well, miso is made from beans, but it has. I mean, the flavour profile is the same. Obviously, the production is very different, but they both use fermentation, and they're both using grains and fermentation, I guess. But one, ends up with a slightly different profile on it. And in Australia, they have Vegemite, which is
Yeah.
similar. I guess it's quite a UK Great Britain centric ingredient.
Is it something that would be fairly easy to make for the home cook?
Yeah, it's pretty easy actually. Yeah, you get you can collect all your waste bread up in the freezer, and then when you have like 4 kilos of it, you just soak it. Oh no, you toast it first. Toast it, then you soak it, then you get some fresh yeast. I think I might have. Do I have a recipe? I'll put a recipe on my Instagram. And then you let it ferment for like 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Then you wring out all the liquid out of the bread, and then you reduce it down over, just put it on a low heat. I mean, it's great for commercial kitchens as well because they have a lot of hobs on all day. I mean, they have heat that can be used, so you can actually just put it on one of the hobs that are in the background. Or if you're a home cook, you can just put it on your hob and medium temperature, and it'll just reduce over a few hours, and then you end up with Marmite. Well, a version of Marmite. Obviously, Marmite's a trademark, so you end up with a yeast extract
Right.
similar to
Well,
Marmite.
there we go. Do you have any simple tips to change our attitudes toward food waste?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's some great resources now online. There's a lot of Instagram. I mean, there's this guy that we follow called No Mise en Plastic. His Instagram has always got lots of tips for food waste, for reducing food waste and plastic in the kitchen. There's chefs like Connor Spacey, who's part of our network.
Yeah.
There's Dargat Silo, the restaurant Silo. All these are sort of very renowned zero waste chefs. So if you following their Instagrams and mine, you have a lot of tips on that. There's a lot of zero waste cookbooks come out now as well. I think the more you arm yourself with knowledge, the easier it is to think that way once you're cooking and preparing. So I always save when I'm preparing onions, I always save my onion skins, and then I'll put them in the bottom of the oven when I'm cooking whatever the dish is. So by the time everything's finished cooking, I've now dehydrated my onion skins as well. So it didn't take me any more time to do that.
Yeah.
And then I can just blitz them all up into a fine powder, and it's great. Depending on how far you take them and the temperature of the oven, you can either dehydrate them or you turn into an ash. Depends what you're going. I mean, ash is less versatile. It's more as a garnish, whereas if they're dehydrated, it's actually an ingredient you can use into like spice rubs. So you can add it rather than using onion powder. You can use onion skin powder, which saves you money as well because people like buy onion powder as an added ingredient for making, especially Mexican dishes.
Mm-hmm.
It has the same, but a slightly nuttier flavor profile.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Less sulfurous than a normal onion powder.
Right, and you're not accumulating more packaging as well,
Exactly.
and you've got a better tasting product. Well, that's great advice. The more knowledge that one has, the better it is. Well, the easier it is to, if you will, be creative about food waste.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always learning. I've just speaking well on the team of the chefs, the Fermenters Guild of the UK. And within that, there's some incredible minds who know so much more about fermentation than I do, down to its molecular, constituent parts.
Yeah.
It's always great to surround yourself and ask people who have the knowledge to, and you sort of absorb it like
Right. And then share it.
osmosis, and then share it. I
Yeah.
mean, we're all here to share with each other.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're all here to look after each other on this world. So the more we can share knowledge and food, sharing food, that's something I think is missing in the world. Families sitting down together. It's much more in Europe and in the Latin countries, I think, but here in the UK especially, people aren't sitting down together as much as we used to when I was growing up.
Yeah. There's a cookbook that was published in the United States a few years ago, but the preface, was written by a sociologist, and it kind of goes into the science statistics of eating a meal together. It's fascinating. It's a really good read. Uh, in your opinion, are we winning the battle against excessive food waste?
I mean, it's definitely much more on the radar now. I think we've still got a long way to go. Definitely have a long way to go. I mean, there is definitely a downturn, but I don't think I think it's fast enough. I mean, apps such as Olio and Too Good to Go, we were one of the first people actually launched. We did a podcast, not a podcast, a documentary with Olio, and this great guy called very interesting character, Rob Greenfield. He's like the zero waste guru of. He's from San Diego. He walked around America. He walked around New York, sorry, in a plastic suit over his clothes, and it had bins on it. I mean, it had like pouches on it. So he wore all of the waste that an average American would produce in a month. So everything he ate, he put all of his packaging into this suit so you could see it. All of like the like pizza boxes and drink cans and loads of stuff. And he just wore around it as an example of how much trash is produced. By an average American. Yeah, him and I worked on a documentary together anyway, with Olio. So Olio, we use them on events that I've done with Sativa Food Studio. We've done big fashion events, and then ahead of that, we know that we are producing more than we're going to use because of for 650 people. Not everyone. You need to have enough options of everything, but not too many options. Obviously, we're not overproducing, being a sustainable company. But at the end of it, we knew that there would be a couple of things that may not get consumed. So we partnered with Olio, and then and planned ahead as well to have the right packaging for sustainable packaging to give to them with all the produce in it. So yeah, we had no waste at the end of it, and we redistributed it through them to soup kitchens, nursing homes, and three other different charities. We got a lovely email the last time we did an event with them from them, thanking us for, obviously, because we produced. We were very conscious about the food that we produced for the event.
Yeah.
So it was, in my mind, delicious, and yeah, a lot of love and care and attention went into the food that we produced. So they really appreciated the quality of the food at the other end as well.
So where might we be able to see this documentary?
I still haven't actually seen it myself. This is 8 years ago. I saw some of the rushes for it. I need to chase them up. Actually, I need to speak to my business partner about that. We went dumpster diving in the UK with a film crew, and then I fed 14 journalists from a meal that we got of completely edible food that was nothing wrong with it, and beer and wine we found there was in these dumpsters outside a well-known UK supermarket. I had 8 dumpsters out the back just full of food. One of my marketing managers at the time, she said that maybe we should go and plant food there, just in case. She didn't believe that there would be food in the UK. You see, he's done lots of documentaries in America. And she was like, maybe we have to go and plant something there. He's like, trust me, you won't need to do that. and I
Wow.
wouldn't want to be part of it if you did do that. And so I was like, okay, come on. I said, it will be fine. I trust him. Let's go. We got there. We found so much food. So it
Huh.
was, we had a film crew filming it. And then we went back to the restaurant, back to Tiny Leaf. And then I made like a 4-course meal for like 15 journalists out of the stuff that we'd procured. Yeah, just
Wow.
to sort of prove the point that there is a lot of food waste in the UK. I've never actually seen it myself. So yeah, it reminded me I need to go and chase them up on that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, did you mention the name of it? The name of the documentary?
I don't know actually what it was. It was something to do. It was with Rob, and like I don't know. I filmed quite a few things over the years, and I'm not always. Like, sometimes they pop up, and I'm like, oh God, is that what happened to that? I've never seen that before. Or
Oh,
articles I featured in or been interviewed for that I've never actually seen.
well, I will follow up with you after this to see if I can include this in the show notes because that does sound quite interesting and a little entertaining as well.
Mm. Yeah, no, I will chase. I'll ask Alice about that, and
All
I'll
right.
ask Rob as well, see if he has information.
So that's a nice segue into what I wanted to ask you about food experiences. What would you like food experiences, whether they're fine dining, street food, home cooking, to be like in the near future? If you could design a food experience or food experiences globally, how would you do it?
Well, yeah, we are working on that next week, as I say. When I'm in, we are working on very large scale food
Yeah.
experiences in for COP28 in Dubai. Yeah, I mean that in line with what we're doing there. That is how I would like to, on a global scale. I mean, at smaller ones are slightly different, but I mean, on a large scale, I think we need to really think about the impact of why we're putting things on the menu. Is it just because it's in vogue?
Yeah.
Is it trending at the moment? Is that why? Because things you can easily supplement one ingredient for another and really not affect the flavor profiles. And maybe sometimes they could be better if you're using something more local, something more conscious, something
Huh. Yeah.
you know just thinking a little bit further, thinking of those 2 steps further. I see it so often in places I eat. I'm like, they haven't really, they've stopped at the first hurdle. They could have easily made it, just been a little bit more circular with their thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it gets
Um,
back to what your friend said. Food waste is a lack of imagination. So
exactly.
I think if we were to be a little bit more imaginative, who knows what we could accomplish?
Yeah, and there's so many delicious things that people would throw in the bin, parts
Yeah.
for ingredients. So there's a great book by Josh Nyland, where he's done 2 books. There's the whole fish cookbook and one fish, I think it's called, something along those lines. Yeah, I mean, he's really transformed the way people cook fish and fish
Mhm.
butchery. I know he's been referenced in a lot of documentaries and cooking shows I've seen, and I see his influence now into the way people prepare fish.
Huh.
Yeah, using how he scales them, how he can age fish. He said every fish, and also not coming into contact with water is a very important one. But I don't think a lot of people know once you're cleaning a fish, you
Hmm.
don't want it to come in contact with water. He just wipes it with a clean cloth, and then you can
Huh.
age it. Once you filleted it, he said every fish will benefit from aging for between 1 day to a couple of weeks
Oh, wow.
to increase the because you haven't added water to it, it doesn't go off so fast. So
Yeah.
you're actually he's retraining chefs on how they can how they deal with their ingredient, which is yeah, I mean for many years I think people haven't really seen it as a treating it like you would meat rather than just what we're thinking.
Yeah, that's true. You wouldn't rinse your steak, or you wouldn't soak your chicken in a tub of water. So
I mean, I do soak my chicken in a tub of water when I make it because I brine it. I brine most of my chicken, so
ah,
yeah, I put
right.
salt and water and we'll cook it. But yeah, not for that. It doesn't. Yeah, it's a very different protein as
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
The flesh on both of them are very different.
Hmm.
So yeah, the fish will absorb the water.
Ah, that's why. So, if not Josh Nyland, who would you recommend for a future episode of this podcast?
Apart from Josh Nyland,
Yeah.
Who would I recommend? I mean, Doug, if you haven't spoke to him already, he's a great resource. Doug McMaster from Silo.
Oh, right.
I mean, Andrew Clark from Acme Fire Cult, or Daniel Watkins. I mean, both of them have different. Daniel's knowledge of fermentation. They turn all of their waste in the restaurant and ferment it into other products there. It's incredible. There was a massive fermentation lab in their restaurant.
Oh,
I took the Zoe team down there a few weeks ago. You've seen the Zoe project, which is sort of mapping the gut biome.
oh,
It's a stamp, you put it on your arm, it interacts with your biology of your body, and then you can map it on an app on your phone. It's launched by Professor Timothy Spector. I mean, he'd be great to have on here. He's not a chef, but he would be great to have on a podcast. His knowledge on the microbiome is incredible. Who else?
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think those guys would be definitely on the top of my list.
That's a list. That's a potent list of 5 people so far. That's very interesting. Thanks. Look, that's all the time that we have for today. So I wanted to say thank you very much. That was really interesting on so many different points here. So I really appreciate the chance.
You're most welcome. Pleasure. I could talk for ages. I mean, so I may have gone off on a few tangents there.
No, not at all. No, thank you so much.
Wendy, it's an absolute pleasure. I look forward to speaking with you soon.
If you like this episode, don't miss an episode by becoming a member. We're waiting for you each week with more guests. We're on all podcast platforms. Just search for Coffee with Scoolinary. We're also waiting for you at our website and on our social networks, where you can get to know all our courses and teachers.